Before we get into today's episode, we want to briefly mention something we're offering. On February 28th, we're hosting a free live educational webinar called Why Betrayal Recovery Needs Maps, Not Just Support. It's an orientation conversation for individuals and couples who feel confused or stuck and want clarity before taking next steps. If that sounds helpful, you can find the details at joy-recovery.com.
After discovery, a lot of things can feel like change. When he has insight, it can feel like change. When he has genuine remorse, it can feel like he's changing. When he starts to demonstrate emotions and they're intense, it can feel like something is changing. But none of those things actually create safety. He can have insight, but that insight can coexist with deception. He can demonstrate remorse, but that remorse can coexist with continuing abuse and harm. And he can have emotional intensity, but that can coexist with entitlement. For betrayed partners, this confusion is devastating because they're often told that if their partner understands now, if they have awareness, or if they feel really bad about what they've done, or if they can explain why they did it, then there's been a meaningful breakthrough and something significant has happened. So today in this episode, we want to clarify two main things. Number one, we want to name what we call the three substitutes for safety that we often see in our practice. And number two, we want to share the three conditions that actually create safety using a framework that we call ACT, A-C-T. So let's start with why this confusion happens so often in recovery. Most of us have been taught, either by therapy culture or pop psychology, or even spirituality, that insight leads to change. And that's partially true. We begin to think that if he begins to understand his childhood trauma, then that's when he will change. Or if he can connect the dots about how his compulsive, entitled sexuality began, that's when he will transform. And that sounds reasonable. It even sounds wise. But in betrayal recovery, that kind of assumption can cause enormous harm. Because the behaviors that we're talking about, they weren't caused by a lack of awareness. They are actually sustained by things like entitlement and compartmentalization and avoiding accountability. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us betrayers are actually very capable of incredible insight. Many of the men that I work with, they can totally explain their childhood and the intricacies of their childhood trauma. Many of them are familiar with attachment theory, and they know their attachment style and they know their partner's attachment style. They can cry very convincingly. They can describe their shame and the root of it and what they do about it in great detail. They can even articulate and define every one of the integrity abuse behaviors in the Manwala model. But they still lie. They still minimize. They still withhold or delay information. They still manipulate. They still protect themselves at their partner's expense. because insight alone is not going to stop these behaviors. Let's talk about the 3 substitutes that we have seen for safety. These 3 things are not bad. They're just not safety. They are substitutes. It's what we call decoys for safety. It's 3 things that feel very convincing enough to replace what's actually required for safety. Substitute number 1, insight. What is insight? Insight is awareness. It's cognitive understanding. It's when he's able to explain patterns and motives, even his emotions. When he has insight, he can answer questions like, why did I do this? What was I feeling? Where did this behavior come from? Insight lives in the head. Insight can be genuine, and it's foundational, but it's not transformational. Insight alone does not change behavior. It doesn't make him reliable. It doesn't produce honesty when he's under pressure. It doesn't establish accountability in his life. And most importantly, it does not create safety in the relationship. We betrayers can have deep, profound insight and still choose self-protection. We betrayers can understand our patterns, but still feel entitled to continue those patterns. We betrayers can cry, but still hide things from you. So when a betrayed partner says to us, he seems to get it now, but I still don't feel safe, we honor that. Because their nervous system doesn't respond to explanations. The betrayed partner's nervous system responds to behavior. That's what creates safety. So that's safety substitute number 1. Let's look at number 2. Remorse. Now, remorse is important. In fact, the absence of genuine remorse is a huge red flag. But remorse is not the same thing as accountability. Remorse does not mean that he has changed or he is safe. Remorse is about feeling bad, but accountability is about giving up control. When we feel remorse, we say things like, I hate that I did this to you. I feel awful about the pain that I've caused you. If I could go back, I would do things so differently. Whereas accountability says, I no longer get to decide what safety looks like for you. I don't get to manage your reactions anymore. I don't have the right to argue with you about your impact. And I don't get to control outcomes anymore. We betrayers can feel deep remorse, but still lie to you to avoid consequences. We can still hide information to prevent our own discomfort. We can pressure you to heal faster than you are. We can resent you for your boundaries and still feel remorse. Or we can perform recovery in front of you so that you will give us reassurance. What I call recovery theater. All of this can take place while we feel remorse. When a man has remorse but no accountability, that is usually emotional manipulation. And betrayed partners can feel that pressure very deeply. So we've talked about 2 of the safety substitutes, insight and remorse. The third one is what we call emotional intensity. What do we mean by that? Well, it's quite common sometime after discovery of the secret sexual basement for we betrayers to demonstrate very intense emotions, more intense than often we've ever experienced or demonstrated. There can be sobbing and weeping. There can be panic. There can be a sense of urgency. There can be a lot of shame and self-loathing. And often there are these grandiose declarations of change, that I'm a new person. I'm not that old person anymore. I've been delivered. I've been set free. I'm transformed. I'm a man of integrity now. And those intense emotions can feel quite convincing. Emotional intensity feels like there's some movement, that there's some seriousness, that something has finally broke free or broke open inside of him. But emotional intensity is not consistency. Therefore, it's not safety. Intensity happens when we men feel a crisis, but consistency happens when no one is watching. Our emotional intensity will spike and then it will fade. But consistency is constant. It's predictably boring, which is what I encourage my men to practice. No surprises, be predictably boring. That's safety. That's consistency. Consistency is repetitive. Consistency is quiet. Safety is not built through intense moments. Your safety is built through consistent patterns.
Recovery breaks down when people are pushed into action before they understand the injury. Education has to come before intervention. That's why we created the Joy Recovery Academy. The Academy is our flagship educational space, designed to help you make sense of betrayal trauma, integrity abuse, nervous system responses, and what real recovery sequencing actually looks like, without pressure to fix anything or decide anything yet. This is where clarity replaces confusion and where you finally get a map before anyone tells you where to go. The Academy includes live teaching twice a week, a growing on-demand library, and hundreds of the same frameworks and tools we use with our private coaching clients. The Academy launches in March. If this feels like the step you were never given, or if you want clarity before action, go to joy-recovery.com, click Academy, and join the waitlist.
So here's the question that naturally follows. If these are three substitutes and decoys for safety, if insight and remorse and emotional intensity don't create safety, well, then what actually does? That's where ACT comes in, ACT. Three conditions that are necessary for safety. And they go in a certain order, and this sequence matters. This sequence is non-negotiable. So ACT, ACT, stands for the three conditions. They are awareness, containment, that's the C, and T, transformation. Awareness, containment, and transformation. Awareness. Or you could call it insight. Now, wait a minute. You're double talking, Roy. You just said that insight is a decoy for safety, for true change. That is true. Insight alone is not enough, but insight or awareness in the ACT model. Awareness is foundational. Awareness is necessary if there's going to be true change, if there's going to be safety. So awareness is critical, but awareness alone does not change behavior. Awareness explains behavior, but it doesn't control whether it's going to happen again. Awareness, no matter how much awareness we have, that does not entitle us to forgiveness from our partners. It does not entitle us for her to trust us again. And no matter how much insight and awareness we have, it does not entitle us to have closeness with our partners again. The very first condition that must be there, the place where I start with the men that I work with, is deepening their awareness. That's the A. There has to be the condition of awareness before we can build the second condition. The C in ACT is containment. This is where real change actually begins to happen. What do I mean by containment? Containment is I no longer have a lot of the freedoms that I used to have because I misused those freedoms to cause harm. Containment is structure. It's boundaries. Containment is accountability. What does containment look like? Containment is having external accountability structures in my life that is not managed or monitored or contingent upon my partner. Containment is when I reduce my access to any kind of secrecy in my life. Containment is I have fewer unchecked, unaccountable decision points in my life. I establish transparency systems for finances, for places I go, for technology. Containment is I give up the privacy that I misused and abused in the past. Containment interrupts our behavior pathway. For me to have containment in my life, it does not require that I have maturity. In fact, it compensates for my lack of maturity. And this is really important. Containment can still exist even without integrity. So containment is not enough. You might have accountability software on your devices. You may have cameras in every room. You may have a GPS tracker on your phone. You may have all of these containers to keep you accountable. But a person can be contained and still resent the container. They can still feel entitled that they shouldn't need this container. And they can still be waiting for all of these rules and containers and guardrails to loosen for them. So we've talked about the two conditions so far that are essential for safety or for change. It's A, awareness, C, containment, and then T, transformation, the actual change. This is integrity. This is the core. This is what we're trying to rebuild in our lives. Integrity is who you are even when no one is watching. Integrity is your character. It is your identity. It's integration. It's internal congruence. What does integrity look like? You're living in integrity when you are proactively telling the truth without any pressure from your partner. You are maintaining real-time shared reality with your partner without any distortion, manipulation, or omission. Integrity is where you practice radical honesty with your partner, and it costs you something to do that. Integrity is where you are consistent in your behavior, even when you are overwhelmed, even when you are under a stress test. Integrity is where you do not perform recovery and you're not focused on image management, what your partner thinks, and what other things. Integrity is self-governing containment. For example, anytime I go to the grocery store, I keep my head down until I get to the aisle where I know what I need to purchase. I find that item, and then I put my head down again. I go to the self-checkout lane, I check out, and I go to the car. My goal, my self-governing containment, going to the grocery store in integrity, is to try to navigate that environment in such a way that I never even have to bounce my eyes. And that's my integrity goal when I go out in public. Integrity is self-governing containment. When you're living in integrity, you don't need as much external structure in your life because you are the structure. You are containing self. And safety only emerges when containment has been stable long enough for integrity to actually form inside of it. So this ACT framework really matters because it helps expose false recovery. For example, if a man has awareness, the first A, but he doesn't have C, containment, what does that look like? It can look like eloquence. It can look like remorse, but he's continuing to cause harm in the relationship because there's no containment. Or maybe he has the second condition. He has containment, but he hasn't built his integrity yet. Well, what that can look like is he is compliant. He's following the containment and the guardrails, the structure that's in his life, but internally, he resents these rules. He resents the container. And covertly, he still feels entitlement that he shouldn't be subjected to this. He doesn't have integrity yet. Or if a man claims that he has integrity, he has changed, but he didn't go through a lengthy period of that second condition, containment, then this is what we call fantasy recovery. He's asking you to prematurely trust, and you are going to be re-traumatized. Because a man does not go from years or even decades of deception to instant integrity. It has to go through this process of awareness, a time and history of containment while his integrity is being architected and built. So if you think of it as a building project, awareness, A, is the foundation. He has to have awareness. C, containment, is the scaffolding that is erected on that foundation. And then T, transformation, is built on that foundation inside that scaffolding over time, piece by piece. So, for the betrayed partners that are listening, I want to emphasize something. It is not your responsibility to try and interpret his insight or his remorse or his emotional intensity. Here are some better questions to ask yourself. Is he being honest with you without you having to dig for it or extract the truth from him? Is accountability established and stabilized in his life without you monitoring it? Is his behavior stable and consistent through time and stress? And does he respect your boundaries without protesting about them? Your nervous system doesn't give a flip about his promises. What your nervous system is measuring are his patterns of behavior. So if something still doesn't feel right inside of you, you need to listen to that because something's off. Safety is a reality that emerges for you over time as he goes through awareness and then containment and then rebuilding his integrity. Integrity is consistency and safety over time. So let me end with this. If he's going through real change, it's quiet. It's slow. It's not glamorous. Change doesn't announce itself. If he's really changing, it doesn't demand that you believe him. It doesn't ask you to trust him before he has earned it and demonstrated it. It does not rush or pressure you for intimacy. If he's really changing, that change doesn't collapse when you don't recognize him or praise him for his change. His insight can sound very convincing and powerful. His remorse can feel sincere and heartfelt. His emotional intensity can feel urgent, even hopeful. But safety is built slowly and quietly through ACT, his awareness, his containment, and his slow transformation within that containment. That is what actually makes harm stop and safety possible. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Joy Recovery Radio. Healing after betrayal is not about speed, certainty, or outcomes. It begins with clarity, safety, and integrity. If today's episode was helpful, you can find additional educational resources and information about the Joy Recovery Academy and our private coaching at joy-recovery.com. Remember, joy is possible when you live in integrity.